Mistakes. We all make them. I know I have. But can we take that mistake and make it into something cool and awesome? Stay tuned to figure out just how we're going to do that today. Hello and welcome back to my workshop. We're going to do a build video. Finally. So, much like any of you, I have also been quarantined, and in quarantine I've been trying to keep myself occupied, which means spending a lot of time in my workshop. Now what that means is that I've been building a lot, but in doing so it also gave me a chance to look into some of my unfinished projects. Much like any of you, I'm sure there are projects that you start and something happens along the way and you kind of abandon it. For me, I have a bad habit of setting them aside and just hanging on to them. A lot of times these projects are ones that I have made a mistake on and intend to scrap them. Before we get into that guitar, there was a second one. So I was intending to make two guitars at the same time, and what ended up happening in production is when I was cutting the break angle, I ended up making this part of the body too thin and ended up cutting it too short here. So that led me to basically scrap the idea. But it's a nice chunk of wood, so I hung on to it, thinking maybe one day I'd come back to it. And quarantine gave me the best excuse to do so. Now, these both were cut identically at the same exact time, and then I got really discouraged when I cut it short, and this was 3 years ago or so, and they have just sat on the shelf since then. Now, during quarantine, I grabbed one of those, and I cut this guitar. Now both of these guitars were intended to be neck through, so the neck portion of it is mahogany with walnut, and then the body is 2 pieces of ash and a koa top with a koa fretboard. Now, if you can't tell, I came up with an interesting way to use that body that I cut too thin. I ended up making these wings flare out in a U shape, which I find very comfortable. But it also gave me the opportunity to do something interesting with that portion that I cut too short. So the input jack is now here, which keeps it out of the way, and it's got a little scoop, which the scoop is unnecessary, but it gave me the option of hiding that input jack. So with that, I then went ahead and made a multi-scale 6-string. So basically the whole idea behind it was that it was a scrap piece anyway, so I could play with it. So in this one, I want to make a semi-hollow. I post a lot of my projects over to Instagram. You can go ahead and follow me with the links below. But I found a company on there that makes a very interesting style of semi-hollow guitar, where it is a compound. So instead of routing out the channels and then putting a cap on top of it, they actually carve out the middle body section so that it's actually hollow all the way through. And I thought I'd like to try my hand at that, because not only did I cut this too thin, it would then give me the opportunity of putting an extra cap on the bottom here. So we're going to sandwich this midsection with a top and a back. But to start off, this is very rough cut before I ended up abandoning it. So I'm going to have to go ahead and straighten this out. Alright, so here's the plan. Because we can't go in without a plan. Now stick with me here. This is my layout of my body. What I'm going to do here is that I've got a section for this board here, and then we're going to fill it out with these pieces of ash here. Now once that is all said and done, I've got a little bit of space here that is missing, which I knew was going to be missing based off of the other one that I did. So we're going to take this board here and split it to bridge this gap here. Now, as I said, I'm going to be doing a compound hollow body. So this middle section is going to be housing all my hardware, and then I'm going to cut out this frame out of these boards, meaning that this will not be a solid chunk. But before we do that, I need to plane these down to the thickness that I need. So here's where we stand with this build currently. So I spent an afternoon squaring up this edge here and flattening this out, and then planing all these pieces. So our main body sections are going to be about 3/4 of an inch thick, giving us our frame to put the top and back on. So what I've got here is it's going to be a 2-piece curly mango top and a teak back. So before I get into too much of the cutting out of the body here, what I want to do is I want to extend this body piece. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a section away from this so that we have a gluing surface not only on the back end, but on the bottom end, giving us the added depth to glue the back onto. So very simply put, I'm going to cross cut this to create a tenon here, and then we're going to glue it up to the butt end of the body. So all that's left, now that this joint fits, and it's straight and it's square, is we got to glue it up. So I'm going to clamp it down to my vise and then use this vise to add pressure this direction. Now while that's drying, we'll call it quits for this episode. Now I know this was more explanation than actual building, but as we get into this, it'll be a lot more building from here on out. I'm going to try and keep these videos short, around the 10-15 minute mark. After we get a few more of these out here, I'll set up a playlist. If you don't want to watch the beginning explanation of what I'm doing, then you can skip around. Stay tuned for the next one. Now that we've extended the body, we've got enough room to start putting the frame together. So until then, as always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.